Prayer is perhaps one of the most personal experiences in the life of a believer or a non-believer. Prayer is being in relationship with God. And there are so many different ways that relationships happen to human beings. Someone might send his wife flowers, and that's a special thing in the relationship. In another relationship, flowers might not mean something. Couples discover all sorts of ways to honor each other. We realize that we are loved by God and that we attempt to respond to that love. And our relationship is prayer. And it can be of a multiplicity of different forms. So people pray with the scriptures, especially the Psalms. People pray with nature. They just are moved to prayer in the beauty of creation. Music lifts up the soul. Repeated prayer, like the rosary, coupled maybe with meditation or just the repetition of prayer, is effective for some folks. Each person is unique, and so everyone has something that is special to that person. It may be a talent, like being an artist, or like a dancer, a musician. I would suspect some musicians, when they begin playing, that their music can be a prayer. I would think parents, when they're looking at their children, that's a prayer. I would think particular things that we enjoy or like, if they're wholesome and helpful and healthy for us, are experiences of prayer. I like to take pictures. I'm a photographer. So often on a retreat, I will take an afternoon and go walking with my camera, or these days you can do it with your digital phone, and I go on a little photography walk, looking for unique things and unique angles or colors or shapes or compositions, and in the act of doing that, I think I'm trying to be open to God and allow, perhaps, as one of my photographer friends says, kind of the inner eye of the soul to take over. So a photographer has an eye, and can compose and make a frame around something, and it turns out to be a good photograph. I think my friend who's a photographer talked about spirituality. She said that there's an inner eye that's doing the same thing, and I think perceiving God at work. If there's something of that inner eye, and I think that's the sense of living with God all the time that I hope we cultivate as religious people, as believers or spiritual people, whatever name. I'm hesitant to put Catholic on it or Christian, but that's where I'm coming from. And I believe that because of Christ, the whole world is touched by God, and that Christ means that I see in the world all sorts of things that then assure me that I am loved, that love is present, and that hope and life and growth is possible. That's the outcome I would look for in prayer. That's the good news. That's what we want to hear from God as announced to us by Jesus. And I think a believer can then cultivate that attitude to God so that inner eye then perceives it. So you're riding on a subway and you see a person across the car, and hopefully God leads you to think that person is special because that person is loved by God. That's just an example. It can happen when you're looking at nature, or when you are hearing music, or any one of millions of different human experiences. I think in some way, all prayer needs to, at some point, leave behind the external, the thinking, the saying of words, even the using of images. Thomas Merton has a a poem. The great Trappist monk Thomas Merton has a poem, and I don't even remember the title of it. But in this poem, he's imagining creation, and he's celebrating all the imagery of creation. And then at a moment in the poet's prayer, all of that falls away. All of that it vanishes. There's no more stars, no more flowers, trees, whatever the imagery had been in the poem. And then he says, "The walls fall down which guarded paradise." And there's a point at which, and I think everybody can reach this, that we move from all of that imagery, all of those words, whatever has helped us in prayer to a certain point, and we come into a silent encounter with God. And the first person to say, I'm not good at that. I mean, I'm very impatient with my prayer life. I want things to happen. I would like to control it. I would like to tell you how good I am at it, or have you ask me questions about it. But in the end, we're all striving, all struggling, all learning what prayer is. And my spiritual director always says to me, at any moment, and probably at all moments, you should simply say, Lord, here I am. Here's how I feel today, or here's the difficulty I'm having with prayer today. And just turning it over to God and letting God show you, what the next step is. But I think somehow the wisdom of contemplatives is that it's possible for all of us, and that to have some kind of silence like that as part of our prayer experience is very important.